Hi everyone. My name is Logan. My pronouns are they, them. I am a PhD student in the Department of Philosophy at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. And my research is actually all about mindfulness. Surprise! What a surprise. Um, I am trying to get going this field that I call the philosophy of mindfulness. Um, and my research, I'm also a moral philosopher, so most of my research is about the intersection of those two things, of mindfulness and morality, which, if you haven't guessed, is inspired by the fact that I was exposed to mindfulness through the teachings of Thai. And as the first thing I was taught about mindfulness is that it is the foundation for ethical living and for moral progress. So basically what I'm trying to do with my dissertation, I just defended my master's thesis last week. I'm presenting to a group of people on Tuesday that hopefully Ellie, I think, is going to go to. Um, but my work is trying to defend this idea that being a mindful person is a morally good way to be. And even if you're not a Buddhist, that's a big thing for me. So even if you I'm trying to convince people that, they like, no self, what is that? And, a lot of philosophers are very suspicious of these things. So my work as a philosopher is to try to find a balance, because philosophers don't like it when you say there's no definition of mindfulness. They really don't like that. I'm trained in what's called analytic philosophy. So I try to find a balance to try to make everyone happy, which means making everyone just a little unhappy, but, trying to find compromises that we can all live with. But yeah, if anyone is out there you can go to my website. If you Google me, if you go to my website, loganscottmitchell.com, you can email me and get in touch, because I would love to, if anyone else is doing research on mindfulness, I'd love to stay in touch. So I'm not going to talk about that though. I'm going to talk about wake up. I had this image today in meditation earlier of a mud bath. I thought, let's have a little bit of a mud bath together. It's good for the skin. May not always be the most comfortable, but my favorite phrase, no mud, no lotus. Within the mud, there's a lot of lotus. But I'm going to start with talking about my aspiration here is to water wholesome seeds, just like that's my aspiration in life, is to help make the world a more mindful place. I'm going to talk about sexuality and relationships. So, trust your body. I hope I don't say anything that's uh, really that disorients you, but trust your body, do what you need to do. Um, and I also just want to share that, like we've sort of heard from the other panelists about some of like the power imbalances that arise from being a young practitioner, I don't think I'd feel comfortable sharing what I'm going to share if I wasn't wearing a brown jacket. So I'm just going to name that. I'm going to name that I was, I received the 14 mindfulness trainings with the Dharma name True Continuation of Compassion in 2021 at Deer Park Monastery. It was one of the most powerful moments of my life. But I certainly wouldn't be telling you this before, because I would have been worried that someone would have said something and that I wouldn't have gotten ordained. So I'm just like, whether or not that's rational, whether or not that would have happened, I'm just want to name yeah. So, but I want to start with what I really love about Wake Up. So what I love about Wake Up, one of the biggest things is that whenever I've practiced in Wake Up sanghas and spaces, I'm trusted. When I share about my relationship with the third mindfulness training, the 14th mindfulness training, what's worked for me, what doesn't work for me over the years, because I've been here for over a decade, I've recited these trainings. I recite the 14 mindfulness trainings every week. I recite the 5 mindfulness trainings every week. I've recited the 5 mindfulness trainings basically every week, at least every other week, for at least 6 years. So I know what it says. And I engage in certain behaviors that some people would say that there's no way that aligns with the third training, right? But when I tell people some of the behaviors I engage in sexually, when I'm in a wake-up sangha, there's no suspicion that it's rooted in wrong view. There's no suspicion that I just haven't been practicing long enough. There's no suspicion that I just don't get it. There's no suspicion that I don't care enough about ethics or Thai's teachings, or there's no suspicion that I am you know, I'm just too full of craving to see past it. I'm just too full of craving to see that what I'm actually doing is unwholesome. Because what there is that there's trust that I can discover what is wholesome for me, what the wholesome way of working with the third mindfulness training is for me. And there is trust that no one else has lived in my body, and that the answer for me may be different from the answer for you. Because certainly what I don't want to say is, because so like, for example, I'm polyamorous. I have a partner, he has another partner. We have a relationship structure that I call relationship anarchy. We have no rules, but we have a lot of care. This is the most care. I've been in a lot of monogamous relationships. I can tell you right now, this is the most loving, joyful, open, communicative, talk about sympathetic joy. Like I've never, because I don't get jealous anymore. Which is wild. I had to, and I worked through it, but we've been together for 5 years. I don't get jealous anymore. To me, that seems like the embodiment of Thay's teachings. But some people don't think so. And so the thing that I love about Wake Up, and just like Fablu said, what's so important about the sovereignty of the Wake Up Sangha is that we are given the space to discover what is wholesome for us. And something I love that Yvonne mentioned is that that's challenging, right? And we need the communication between sanghas. The mentoring that I've had from some of my mentors are here today on the call. I see BK's on the call and Susan's on the. I mean, some of my dearest sangha siblings and mentors that are not, you know, or like that were Wake Up and now aren't, or that, you know, whatever. That was essential to my liberation, and they were essential to me finding what was true for me. And in part because they knew that the answer might be different for me than it was for them. And there wasn't this sense that this is not Thay's teachings. There wasn't a sense that if we wanted to go to Sangha and use the term bellminder instead of bellmaster, there's no sense of, well, that's not Thay's teaching, so don't do it. And not everyone in our tradition has that kind of flexibility and openness. So I'm going to be honest about the mud, but that's the mud with Plum Village sort of brought with the Mahasangha. There's some mud there. We have something like a don't say gay problem. And it's funny because I know all of the Plum Village practitioners, I'm sure, were really against that Florida bill. I'm sure. I can almost guarantee that everyone, you know, politically, like, we're whether we like it or not, we're a pretty politically homogenous group. So let's also, we can name that. We don't have to pretend. We can name that. But I think that what we don't realize is that in some of the Sangha spaces, there's a little bit of a don't say gay or a don't say polyamorous or a don't say sex norm. Because if you do say it, you're met with suspicion. And remember, suspicion is not a wholesome mental formation. It's an unwholesome mental. If you go to the 51 mental formations on the Plum Village website, suspicion is not wholesome. But compassion is wholesome. Sympathetic joy is wholesome. Equanimity is, inclusiveness is wholesome. And that would be my invitation for everyone here. And also, the reason I wanted to share this is because no one was sharing this publicly when I was figuring out things, and I thought something was wrong with me. I thought, why do I keep having these experiences that aren't causing me harm? Like, you know, years later, I had these quote unquote casual experiences, which I think we should move away from that term. BK told me something that I really like. Why do we use that term? It doesn't have to be just because there's sexual encounters outside of a long-term committed romantic relationship, especially in the queer community. Let me just say that it can be so healing for us. Sex is different for us than for a lot of straight people. It just is. And if you don't know that, it's because you haven't been in a queer body. But it's different. And I thought something was wrong with me because I thought, I'm deluding myself. I thought I must be deluded. How terrible is that? That I thought that I was 18, 19, 20, and I left the practice for a while. I stopped reciting the trainings because I thought I just can't make them work. I thought, because I was such a perfectionist, I thought if I was going to be here, I had to be, quote unquote, perfect in that way. And even when I started my aspirancy as an Order of Inner Being member, I thought I had to do that too. And I thought, okay, is the pandemic. I was like, I'm gonna try to put the square peg in the round hole. I'm gonna just try to make it work. And for a couple months it did, and then it didn't. And then and I realized it's not me. It's not me. It's the way I've been interpreting the trainings. I view the trainings as a kind of constitution, like a living document, right? More living than the Constitution, probably, actually, because it's a lot easier to amend, as you saw. But we all have different interpretations of the Constitution, different ways of interpreting. And for me, when I think of deep long-term commitment, that's about my practice. That's about my values. That's about being committed to my Sangha, being committed to my deepest aspirations, but not getting caught up in what I consider to be sometimes this kind of purity culture of, if you don't do it this way, you're kind of dirty or you're bad. And that doesn't resonate for me. The narrow perceptions of relationships, as the Arise trainings say, and I think they do such a good job of talking about how narrow perceptions of intimate relationships can cause a lot of suffering. And but if anyone on the call here needed to hear this, I hope that you know that it's not you. There's nothing wrong with you. You're not deluded. You're not just blinded by craving. And if you're someone who's hearing me speak and who somehow, that's what your mind is producing, if those are the thoughts coming up in your mind, just work with that. But you don't need to tell me. I don't need to hear it. Because guess what? I practice in this body every day. I practice in this spot. I meditate for an hour. I meditate for an average of 60 minutes a day. I spend time in my body, and I breathe, and I drink my tea, and I have a great time, and I feel joy, and I love life, and I love our practice so much. And it is because of Thai that I have been able to find myself and to be myself. And as Sister D says, who's my favorite, and as you know from what I've just said, Sister D has a very different perspective on sex than I do. We are all the way on different, but there's the spectrum's just in the historical dimension. Ultimately, we're one, right? But she says, be your own soulmate. And that's something I 100%, where we're just BFFs on that, because she says, be your own soulmate. And that's through being polyamorous and through releasing myself from what I was experiencing as the shackles of this kind of narrow interpretation of sexuality and what kinds of sexual encounters were wholesome or unwholesome. When I allowed myself to experiment, like Fap Lu said, to experiment with different ways of life, with experimenting, when I gave myself that freedom, I found freedom. I mean, surprise! Like I have found that has been liberatory for me, and I know that that's not true for everyone. I know that for monastics, giving these quote unquote restraints, that's what makes them free. And what I love about Wake Up is that we hold both of those things are true. That what's true, I get to be free in my way, the monastics get to be free in their way, and then we get to be free together. And that's what I love about Wake Up, is because the monastics don't say, your way of being free is not so free. Your way of being free is actually, you're secretly still, you've just deluded yourself, or whatever it is. Or your way of being free isn't what Thai taught. Your way of being free is bad. I have experienced vibes like that, looks like that. Like I've experienced things like that in all ages sanghas. Doesn't feel good. But I've never I can yeah, I can say I've never experienced that in wake up space. Even though I have so many wake up friends who love the you know the they're monogamous. They have for them the answer to some of these questions about what's wholesome sexually for them are more quote unquote like traditional or whatever you want like. But even those folks, there's never been any suspicion. But I've encountered a lot of suspicion. And so my invitation for us is to learn from the wake uppers, to witness what it can be like without suspicion, what a sangha can be like without that suspicion and with trust, when we can trust that you're on your path. And if I ask you for guidance, please give me guidance, and give me honest guidance, but realize that that guiding someone to your truth may not is that I don't think that's the right way to guide someone. We should be guiding people towards their own truths. And of course, I think some things are, I am a philosopher. I think some things are true and some things are false. Obviously, I don't think people, I'm not going to guide people to do things, to lie to a bunch of people and be a really mean person. I'm not going to do that. But to recognize that we all love the 5 mindfulness trainings. We love Thai's teachings. I love the practice of mindfulness. I aspire to walk this bodhisattva path and to trust that I know how to walk. To trust that I know how to walk. And if I need help, I'll ask for help. But I don't need you to push me. I don't want you to push me, actually. Yeah, I think I'll end there. But I just want to say thank you to the other 2 panelists for your wonderful, beautiful shares. I'll go ahead and invite a sound of the bell, and then maybe we'll take like a 3-minute bio break, and then we can come back at 30 minutes past the hour, and then we'll have some time for Q&A and sharing. But I will invite a sound of the bell. Well, dear friends, let's go ahead and return at 3 minutes past the hour for our Q&A. This is Logan bowing out.